The forgotten temple opened for the rejected Omega. Then someone inside called the Alpha King's name. "Hello, everyone." By midnight, Elara Whitmore would walk into a forest every wolf in Blackridge feared. But first, the people she had loved all her life would teach her how quietly a heart could be abandoned. If stories about courage, destiny, and love finding those the world overlooks speak to you, subscribe and tap the notification bell. It helps our channel grow. And now, back to Elara. She stood beside the gathering stone beneath a cold October moon, 22 years old and painfully aware of the empty space around her. No one had ordered the pack to step away. They simply had. Beyond the clearing, Blackridge Hall glowed with preparations for King Ronan Ashford's arrival. Music drifted through open doors. Young women hurried past in jewel-colored gowns. Servants carried silver trays beneath banners bearing the royal crest. Elara wore gray because Alpha Grant Holloway had told her not to draw attention. Across from her stood Ethan Caldwell. Once, when they were 17, he had sat with her beside the river after another failed attempt to awaken her wolf. She had cried from frustration, embarrassed by tears she could not stop. Ethan had taken her muddy hand and promised, "Whatever the moon gives us, you won't face it alone." 5 years later, he could barely look at her. Alpha Grant raised one hand, silencing the clearing. "Ethan Caldwell, speak your decision." Ethan's throat moved. For one fragile second, Elara remembered the boy beside the river and wondered if he might still be somewhere inside the man before her. "I reject Elara Whitmore as my mate." No one laughed at first. That made it worse. Elara heard a woman exhale in relief. Someone behind Ethan quietly removed the ceremonial ribbon that would have joined their wrists. A chair beside Ethan's family was carried away before Elara had even answered. Her place was disappearing while she still stood there. Pain tightened beneath her ribs. "Why?" Ethan finally met her eyes. There was regret in them, but not enough courage. "I'm being considered for command. I need a mate who can strengthen my position. Your wolf has never awakened." "And if there were no command?" Elara asked. Ethan hesitated. That hesitation answered her. A whisper traveled through the gathering. "Wolfless." Elara looked at the faces around her. Neighbors whose children she had watched, women whose sick relatives she had helped Miriam tend, people who had accepted her kindness easily when it cost them nothing. Now they studied the ground. She understood then that rejection was not one man saying no. It was an entire community deciding silence was more comfortable than standing beside her. "I accept," she said. The bond tore with a hot, breathless ache. Her knees weakened, but Elara remained upright. Ethan instinctively moved toward her, then stopped when Grant looked at him. That hurt more than the severing. Madeline Holloway approached her father, pale blonde hair shining beneath the torches. She did not insult Elara. She simply glanced toward the brightly lit hall. "The royal procession will be here soon." Grant understood. "Elara, you will remain away from the reception." Elara stared at him. "Because I was rejected?" "Because tonight Blackridge must present its strength." The words were calm, almost reasonable. That was what made them cruel. Elara nodded once and walked away. No one followed. Near her cottage, Dr. Miriam Bellamy waited beneath the bare branches of an old maple. The healer took one look at Elara's face and asked no questions. Instead, she opened Elara's palm and placed a silver chain inside it. A milky white stone shaped like a teardrop rested against her skin. Elara recognized it immediately. "My mother's necklace. Rebecca asked me to keep it safe," Miriam said softly. "Until there came a night when you needed to remember that something belonged to you before Blackridge ever decided what you were worth." Elara closed her fingers around it. "Why didn't you give it to me before?" "Because before tonight, you were still trying to earn a place they should never have made you beg for." Royal horns sounded in the distance. Elara fastened the necklace, but she could not make herself return toward the lights. She entered the forest instead, seeking only enough darkness to cry, where no one could hear. Yet after the music faded and the familiar trail disappeared behind her, a deep sound rolled through the trees. Elara lifted her head. Somewhere beyond the pines, stone was moving. Elara stood motionless among the pines. The sound came again, deep, deliberate, far too heavy to be a branch giving way. Somewhere beyond the ridge, stone was grinding against stone. She should have turned back. Miriam would worry if she stayed gone too long, and the forest beyond Blackridge's familiar trails had frightened children for generations. But returning meant passing the gathering stone, perhaps hearing music from a celebration where her absence had been requested as proof of the pack's strength. Tonight, the unknown felt kinder. Alara slipped her mother's pendant beneath her cloak and followed the sound. The woods changed as she walked. Spruce and pine thinned into ancient oaks with silver moss clinging to their trunks. The trail beneath her boots narrowed, then disappeared entirely. Even the ordinary night sounds faded. No insects, no distant wolves, only the soft crush of leaves and her own uneven breathing. She almost turned around when she noticed two waist-high stones half buried beside a descending path. Weather had softened their edges, but something remained carved beneath the moss. Alara brushed it away. A circle of wolves surrounded a crescent moon. Heat touched her chest. She jerked her hand back. Beneath her cloak, the teardrop pendant had grown warm. Alara pulled it into view. The milky stone looked unchanged, yet warmth pulsed through the silver setting against her fingertips. "Mother," she whispered, though she did not know whether she was asking a question or simply wishing Rebecca were there to answer one. The path descended into a hollow filled with thin mist. Alara took several cautious steps and stopped. An enormous structure rested against the mountainside, nearly consumed by the forest. Vines wrapped weathered pillars. Tree roots crossed fractured stairs. Statues stood along the outer wall with their features worn away, as if time itself had tried to erase whoever they had once represented. At the center were two towering doors made from dark stone. Alara knew what she was looking at. Every Blackridge child did. The Forgotten Temple. Elders told different versions of its history, usually after too much wine or when they wanted young wolves to stay close to home. Some claimed the moon goddess had abandoned it. Others said something terrible had happened there before their grandparents were born. But every version agreed on one thing. The temple had been closed to ordinary wolves for generations, and no living Blackridge wolf claimed to have crossed its threshold. Warriors had challenged its doors. Alphas had tried to force them. Miriam once mentioned that even members of the royal bloodline had been turned away. Alara stared at the entrance and almost smiled at the absurdity. A place that refused kings certainly had no reason to welcome her. She turned away. The pendant suddenly became hotter. Alara caught it through her dress, startled, then faced the temple again. The sensation eased. She took one step toward the stairs. Warmth returned. "You want me to go closer?" Saying it aloud made her feel foolish, but there was no one there to hear. She climbed. With each step, the pendant responded until she reached the doors and found the same crescent and wolves symbol carved at eye level. Alara examined the surrounding stone. No keyhole, no hollow shaped for the pendant. Nothing suggested the necklace could unlock anything. She raised it anyway. For a moment, the pale center seemed almost luminous. Then it went completely cold. Alara's fragile hope collapsed with it. She let out a quiet breath. Of course, one strange necklace did not transform her into someone ancient magic had been waiting for. She had spent enough of her life searching for signs that she belonged somewhere. "Not tonight," she murmured. Alara lowered the pendant and stepped back. The earth beneath her boots trembled. Dust spilled from the archway. She froze. A vibration traveled through the massive doors, followed by the same grinding sound that had drawn her through the forest. A narrow seam appeared between the stones. Alara stared at the necklace hanging cold and powerless in her hand. She had not inserted it anywhere. She had not spoken a spell. She had not even touched the entrance. Yet the gap widened, releasing a breath of warm air scented faintly with cedar and ash. Somewhere beyond the threshold, a single amber flame awakened. Then another. Alara's heart hammered as understanding settled over her. The necklace had brought her here, but it had not opened the Forgotten Temple. Somehow, impossibly, the temple had opened for her. Alara remained at the threshold while amber flames awakened one by one inside the Forgotten Temple. She could still leave. Nothing blocked the path behind her, and somewhere beyond the forest Miriam was probably wondering why she had not returned. Then Alara heard it. A faint cough came from the darkness. She leaned toward the opening. "Hello." No answer. Another sound followed, an uneven breath, unmistakably human. Fear tightened her stomach, but something stronger held her there. Hours earlier, an entire pack had watched her suffer because helping would have required them to step out of the safety of the crowd. Alara could not become that kind of person simply because no one was watching her now. "If you can hear me, I'm coming in. She crossed the threshold. A nearby brazier flared without being touched. Another answered farther down the corridor. Alara immediately looked at the pendant. The milky stone remained cold. Whatever recognized her here was not simply obeying the necklace. The passage opened into a gallery lined with faded murals. Wolves surrounded men and women wearing crowns. But beside each ruler stood another figure marked by an open eye. They did not kneel. Alara slowed. Several faces had been deliberately scratched from the stone, while the crowned figures remained intact. Someone had not merely abandoned this place. Someone had wanted part of its history forgotten. A cough echoed ahead. Alara followed it into a vast chamber where roots descended through cracks in the ceiling. Near an old stone seat, a man sat slumped against a pillar. Silver hair reached his shoulders. His gray coat hung loosely from a body made thin by age and isolation, but his amber eyes were clear when they found hers. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then the man whispered, "You came." Alara stopped beyond his reach. "Were you calling for help?" "Not in many years." His voice was rough from disuse. "Who are you?" He tried to stand. His legs buckled. Alara moved before caution could stop her and caught his arm. He weighed almost nothing. "Easy." The stranger stiffened beneath her hand. "You should be more careful with men you find buried inside forgotten temples. You should be more careful trying to stand when you clearly can't." Something almost like amusement crossed his exhausted face. Alara helped him settle again. "My name is Silas Mercer." Alara Whitmore. The change in him was immediate. His fingers tightened against the floor. "Whitmore?" "Yes." Silas studied her face so intently that Alara became uncomfortable. Then his gaze dropped to the silver chain at her throat. "Where did you get that?" Alara covered the pendant instinctively. "It belonged to my mother." "Rebecca?" The name left him barely above a breath. Alara's heart seemed to stop. "You knew her?" Silas closed his eyes. For 1 second, grief stripped decades from his face. "I knew what she was trying to protect." Alara crouched closer. "Protect from whom?" His eyes opened again. "Not yet." Anger rose through her confusion. "You know my mother's name. I walked into a place no living Blackridge wolf claims to have entered, and you're sitting here as if you expected someone. Don't tell me not yet." Silas regarded her quietly. "Good. Good. You asked for truth instead of permission." Alara almost stood and left him there. "If you're testing me, stop." "I'm not testing you." His expression softened. "This place is." Before she could demand what that meant, a distant horn rolled through the mountain. Silas's head snapped toward the corridor. A second horn followed, deeper and closer. Alara recognized the royal signal from Blackridge. The king. Silas's face lost all trace of warmth. He pushed himself upright despite the pain, staring toward the entrance as though the stone walls had suddenly become transparent. "What is it?" Alara asked. He did not answer. Another horn sounded through the night. Silas gripped the pillar, his knuckles widening. The fear in him was unmistakable now, but beneath it lived something older. Anger, sorrow, perhaps even regret. Alara rose slowly. "Silas, what does the Alpha King have to do with this temple?" The old man looked at her, then beyond her toward the open doors. When he spoke, he did not say the king. He did not say his majesty. He whispered the name with the terrible familiarity of a man remembering a wound that had never healed. "Ronan Ashford." The name left Silas's lips just as King Ronan Ashford entered Blackridge Hall. Hundreds of wolves bowed beneath royal banners, but Ronan barely noticed them. The instant his boots crossed into Blackridge territory, an old pressure had returned beneath his ribs, a sensation he had not felt since childhood. For one unwanted second, he remembered being 8 years old, standing outside his father's study while 2 men argued behind a locked door. He remembered only fragments. His father's furious voice, a glass breaking, and one name spoken before the door opened, and everyone fell silent. Silas Mercer. Ronan had asked about him the next morning. King Alden had gripped his son's shoulder hard enough to hurt, and said, "You will never speak that name again." 23 years later, Ronan had obeyed. Until tonight. "Your Majesty." Alpha Grant Holloway approached with his daughter beside him. Madeline wore sapphire velvet and a carefully practiced smile. "Blackridge is honored." A royal guard hurried through the hall and bent close to Ronan. Scouts reported movement in the Western Hollow. Ronan's attention sharpened. "What movement?" The Forgotten Temple. The guard swallowed. Its doors are open. The room seemed to recede around Ronan. Impossible, Grant said. Ronan turned on him. Who went there? Grant hesitated. Ethan Caldwell, standing among the warriors, looked away. Ronan caught it. Someone is missing. An Omega, Grant admitted. Alara Whitmore. Why was she alone in the western forest? Silence answered first. Then Ethan stepped forward. I rejected her tonight, Your Majesty. Ronan studied him. And afterward, she left the gathering. Grant intervened. The girl has no awakened wolf. She was upset. Whatever happened at the temple may simply be coincidence. Ronan's gaze became cold. A door that has refused generations of alphas opens for one woman, and your first instinct is to call it coincidence. Grant said nothing. Take me there. They reached the hidden hollow before the reception fires had burned low. Ronan dismounted and stared at the ancient structure emerging from the mist. He had seen drawings of it locked inside royal archives. His father had forbidden those too. Now its doors stood open. Alara appeared between them. Her gray dress looked painfully plain against the glowing interior, chestnut hair loose around her shoulders. She did not resemble a threat to a kingdom. Yet something inside Ronan recognized that his life had just divided into before this moment and after it. Alara Whitmore, he called. Yes. Come outside. She remained where she was. There's an injured man here. Ronan's pulse slowed. Who? Alara glanced behind her. Silas Mercer. The world narrowed to those two words. Ronan saw again his father's hand on his shoulder. Never speak that name again. He started toward her. Grant caught his arm. Your Majesty, perhaps the guard should enter first. Ronan looked down at Grant's hand until the Alpha released him. No. He climbed the broken steps alone. Ronan, Alara said suddenly. Hearing his first name from a stranger should have angered him. Instead, it felt like the past reaching through her. Silas called you by name before I told him you were here. Ronan stopped only once. Then he continued. The moment his boot crossed the threshold, the enormous doors slammed inward. He jumped back as stone struck stone hard enough to shake dust from the pillars. Guards drew their swords. Open them. Grant shouted. I'm not doing this. Alara pressed both hands against the narrowing gap. The door stopped. Ronan stared. She pushed one palm against the stone. Slowly, the entrance widened again. Ethan whispered something behind him, but Ronan heard only his own heartbeat. Alara looked from the doorway to Ronan, understanding arriving in her blue-gray eyes. It isn't trying to keep everyone out. She extended one hand through the opening. I think it's trying to keep you out. Ronan looked at her offered palm. Kings did not ask rejected Omegas for permission. His father certainly never would have. Perhaps that was precisely the point. Ronan placed his hand in hers. Warmth moved sharply between them, startling them both. Alara's fingers tightened. Together they crossed the threshold. The temple remained open. Behind them, Grant, Ethan, Madeline, and the royal guard stood speechless as the Alpha King entered an ancient place his own blood could not command, guided by the woman Blackridge had decided was too weak to stand among them. Ronan's hand remained around Alara's for 3 steps beyond the threshold. Neither seemed willing to acknowledge the strange warmth that had passed between them. When he finally released her, the temple entrance began narrowing behind them. Grant immediately moved forward. Your Majesty. The stone reacted before Ronan could answer, forcing the Alpha back. Stay outside, Ronan ordered. But no one follows. The door stopped with only a thin opening remaining, enough for torchlight to cut across the floor. Alara studied Ronan. Blackridge had spent weeks preparing to impress this man, yet inside the temple, he carried none of the certainty she had expected from a king. You remembered Silas's name, she said. Ronan looked toward the chamber ahead. From childhood. That's why you came so quickly. His silence confirmed it. My father forbade me to speak his name when I was 8. Ronan's voice was controlled, but Alara heard the old wound beneath it. I never knew why. Then perhaps we're both tired of being told which questions we're allowed to ask. His eyes met hers. For the first time, something almost like understanding passed between them. They found Silas standing beside the ancient stone seat, one hand gripping a pillar for support. The moment he saw Ronan, his expression changed. Not hatred. Something more complicated. You have your mother's eyes. Ronan stopped. Silas Mercer died 23 years ago. That is what Alden wanted remembered. Ronan's shoulders hardened at his father's name. Who were you to him? A man whose duty became inconvenient. Speak plainly. Silas gave a tired smile. Still in Ashford. Alara stepped between the tension before it sharpened further. Silas, you knew my mother. Ronan remembers your name. This temple opened for me, but refused him. We deserve more than riddles. Silas looked at her for a long moment. Then listened carefully. I was keeper of this temple, and once, this place served the crown. Ronan glanced toward the damaged murals. As a sanctuary? As a safeguard? Silas gestured toward the crowned figures and the companions marked by open eyes. Kings held power. Others were charged with preserving what kings did with it. Alara looked at the deliberately ruined faces. Someone tried to erase them. Yes. Who? Silas's gaze moved to Ronan. That answer is sealed deeper than my testimony. Ronan stepped closer. You expect me to accept that? No. I expect you to decide whether you are willing to learn it. Silas's attention shifted to the teardrop pendant resting against Alara's chest. For the first time, surprise broke through his restraint. The moonstone key survived. Alara touched the milky stone. That's what this is? That is what the witnesses called it. It carries memory and lineage, not the power to command these doors. His gaze returned to her. Your mother understood the difference. Before Alara could ask more, a vibration passed through the chamber. Pale lines appeared across the circular floor, spreading until two symbols formed in light. A crown beneath Ronan and an open eye several feet away. The moonstone key warmed against Alara's chest. Silas inhaled sharply. After all these years. Alara approached the eye. What does it mean? The temple recognizes two roles that were never meant to exist without each other. The crown, Ronan said. Silas nodded, then looked at Alara. And the witness. The words settled inside her with unfamiliar weight. You think that's me? What I think no longer matters. The temple has made its choice. Ronan looked from Alara to Silas. If we stand on them? Silas's face became grave. The sealed records begin to wake. What they contain may change what you believe about your family, your throne, and her bloodline. Alara closed her fingers around the moonstone key. She thought of Rebecca, of Miriam protecting it for years, of Ethan's rejection and Grant deciding she should disappear from royal sight. She had spent too much of her life allowing other people to define the boundaries of what she deserved to know. And if we walk away? She asked. The temple sleeps again, Silas said. Perhaps for another generation. Ronan looked at her. This is your choice too. The word surprised her. An Alpha King could have commanded her forward. Instead, he waited. Alara stepped onto the open eye. I'm done living inside other people's silence. Ronan watched her, then moved onto the crown. So am I. White light erupted beneath them. The entrance slammed completely shut, severing every voice from outside. Across the walls, damaged murals began restoring themselves stroke by stroke. One forgotten face emerged above Alara. A young woman stared down from the stone, and around her painted neck hung the same moonstone key Alara wore. Silas whispered, Now there is no going back. Alara barely heard him. Beneath the restored woman's image, letters were appearing, one after another, forming a surname she had carried her entire life. Whitmore. The name Whitmore completed itself beneath the painted woman, and Alara forgot to breathe. She stepped closer. The figure did not resemble Rebecca exactly, yet something in the eyes felt familiar, not memory, but recognition carried through generations. Before Alara could ask Silas anything, the restored mural changed. Pale light flowed from the open eye symbol beneath her feet into the wall. Images appeared without sound. Women and men wearing the same teardrop pendant standing beside crowned rulers, recording treaties, deaths, judgments, and promises. They never bowed. When a king spoke, they listened. When he turned away, they kept writing. Witnesses, Alara whispered. Silas nodded. The Whitmores were among them. Another image formed. A royal decree burned while hands tore names from a ledger. Families fled beneath rain. A dark-haired woman clutched a familiar necklace as she disappeared into the forest. Alara moved toward the image. Mother. The scene vanished before Rebecca's face could fully turn. Why did she run? Because 23 years ago, someone decided memory itself had become dangerous, Silas said. Ronan's expression tightened, but Silas raised a hand. The temple will show what happened. I will not replace its testimony with mine. Alara appreciated that more than another answer. A new sensation interrupted her thoughts, a gentle pressure beneath her ribs. She pressed a hand there. It came again. Not pain. A presence. Quiet. Patient. Alive. Her knees weakened. Alara. Ronan moved toward her, but stopped before touching her. What do you feel? I don't know. She closed her eyes. For years she had searched inside herself for the force other wolves described. Claws beneath skin, instinct roaring for release, dominance demanding to be felt. There had never been anything like that. This was different. A soft awareness brushed against her consciousness, then withdrew. Tears filled her eyes before she understood why. She's there. Silas said nothing. Alara looked at him. My wolf. Only then did he answer. Yes. The word broke something open inside her. Then why couldn't anyone sense her? Silas approached slowly. Because Blackridge taught you to recognize strength only when it announces itself. He indicated the witnesses surrounding the old kings. Your bloodline developed differently. Witness wolves were prized for stillness. They could stand beside overwhelming alpha dominance without surrendering judgment to it. Their presence turned inward instead of pressing outward. Alara remembered every failed ceremony, every healer who had waited for a scent that never came, every sympathetic glance. So I wasn't broken. Ronan's jaw tightened. No, Alara turned on him. Would you have known that yesterday? He could have comforted her. Instead, he took his time. No, the answer hurt, but she believed it. If I had met you before tonight, I might have trusted what our laws and histories taught me. He looked toward the damaged records. Now I'm beginning to understand who wrote those histories. Something in Alara eased. Not because a king had validated her, but because this one was willing to admit where his power had made him blind. The floor pulsed again. Behind Silas, a sealed arch emerged as layers of ancient dust spilled from its outline. 2 handprints appeared in the stone, one beneath a crown, one beneath an open eye. Silas went pale. Ronan noticed. What is that? The final testimony. Alara's hand found the moonstone key. About my mother? About the night she escaped. Ronan approached the crown mark. And my father? Silas did not answer. He did not need to. A faint sound came from within the sealed wall. Not a mechanism this time. A woman's voice, preserved somehow across 23 years. Alara recognized nothing about its tone, yet her body responded before her mind could. The quiet wolf inside her lifted its head. If you are hearing this, the woman said, then one of us survived. Alara's eyes filled. Ronan stood beside her as the voice continued. My name is Rebecca Whitmore. What happened here must never belong to the crown alone. The chamber darkened until only the 2 waiting handprints remained illuminated. Then Rebecca spoke the name Ronan had spent his life believing belonged to a respected dead king. Alden Ashford gave the order. Alden Ashford gave the order. Rebecca's voice faded, leaving Ronan staring at the handprint beneath the crown. Alara expected him to hesitate. Instead, he placed his palm against it. Show me. She understood what the temple required and pressed her hand beneath the open eye. Light swallowed the chamber. When it cleared, Alara stood inside a memory 23 years old. The temple was no ruin. Witnesses crowded the hall, while royal soldiers blocked every exit. At the center stood King Alden Ashford, younger than the portraits Alara knew, holding a ledger over a brazier. Rebecca stood among the witnesses with the moonstone key around her neck. Destroy the records, Alden commanded. The kingdom will remember what the crown tells it to remember. A witness stepped forward. You broke the covenant. You took power from sacred territories to strengthen your rule. People died. We will record it. Alden dropped the ledger into the flames. Then there will be no witnesses left to record anything. Soldiers advanced. The memory fractured into terrible glimpses. Families running, names burning, Silas dragging Rebecca toward a hidden passage. Take the key, his younger self told her. Keep the bloodline alive. Rebecca gripped his arm. Come with me. If no keeper remains, he can rewrite all of it. Silas sealed her escape behind stone and turned back alone. The scene shifted once more. Alden stood before the temple entrance. Seal Mercer inside. By sunrise, the witnesses were traitors. Anyone who says otherwise joins them. Darkness returned. Ronan tore his hand from the wall, as if burned. He stumbled backward, breath ragged. He told me they attacked him. No one answered. I was 8. His voice broke on the last word. Silas looked at him without cruelty. You were a child when he lied to you. Ronan lifted his eyes. I'm not a child now. The temple responded. Names began appearing across the walls, dozens of them. Some belonged to witnesses. Others were spouses and children. Ronan read until he reached the final count. 47. Alara watched the number register on his face. What happens if this testimony is released? He asked. Silas's answer came carefully. Alden used the Old Covenant to legitimize Ashford rule after the killings. Proving he violated it gives every territorial alpha the right to demand a royal reckoning. Some will call for your removal. Alara's stomach tightened. There it was, not abstract shame, but a price. Ronan could restore the truth and place his own throne in question. And if the testimony stays here, he asked. Nothing changes, Silas said. Your reign remains secure. Alara looked at Ronan. She would not ask him to sacrifice a kingdom for her mother. You don't owe me your crown. His eyes moved to Rebecca's image. No, then to the 47 names. I owe them the truth. Ronan, think about what that could cause. I am. He stepped onto the crown symbol. If my right to rule survives only because murdered people were called traitors, then it deserves to be questioned. Silas stared at him. Your council will fight you. Then they can fight me in daylight. A deep pulse traveled through the temple. The sealed testimony opened behind them, revealing the preserved royal ledger Alden had failed to destroy. Ronan lifted it carefully. At that moment, the temple doors opened. Grant stood outside with Ethan, Madeline, and the royal guards. His eyes went straight to the ledger. Your Majesty, he said, understanding enough to be afraid. Whatever you found can remain buried. Think of the stability of the kingdom. Ronan walked toward him carrying the evidence that could cost him everything. Grant lowered his voice. No one outside this room needs to know. Alara felt the old temptation hidden inside those words. The same bargain Blackridge had offered her all her life. Remain quiet, remain small, and everyone else stays comfortable. Ronan stopped beside her. He did not move in front of her. Alara, he said, will you stand as witness when this is read? Her throat tightened. He was not asking her to protect his throne. He was asking her to challenge it. Alara stepped beside him. Yes. Ronan faced the waiting wolves and handed the ledger to his captain. Then take this to Blackridge. Grant went pale. Your Majesty, Ronan's voice carried through the open temple. At sunrise, every wolf who watched Alara Whitmore be rejected will hear the truth my father tried to bury. And when it is finished, they may decide whether I still deserve to be their king. At sunrise, the gathering stone looked nothing like the place where Alara had been rejected hours earlier. There were no ribbons, no music, no celebration waiting beyond it. Only the wolves of Blackridge gathered in a wide circle, while Ronan's captain placed Alden Ashford's preserved ledger on the same stone where Ethan had broken their bond. Alara stood beside Ronan, not behind him. Silas waited with Miriam near the front, leaning heavily on his cane. Grant Holloway approached before the reading began. Your Majesty, may I speak privately? Ronan looked around at the crowd. Was Alara rejected privately? Grant's mouth tightened. No, then neither will this be. The captain opened the ledger. One by one, the names of the 47 dead were read aloud. No titles, no accusations. Just names returned to people who had been denied even that dignity. When Rebecca Whitmore was identified as the witness who escaped with the surviving record, Miriam reached for Alara's hand. Alara squeezed back. Ronan waited until the final name had been spoken. Then he stepped before his people without crown or ceremonial cloak. King Alden Ashford ordered these deaths. He falsified the royal record and branded innocent families traitors to protect his rule. A restless murmur moved through the gathering. I inherited his throne, Ronan continued. I will not inherit his lie. Grant stepped forward. And what happens when every alpha in the territories uses this to challenge you? Blackridge could fracture with the rest of the kingdom. Then I will answer their challenge. Ronan's voice remained level. A crown protected by silence is not stability. His gaze moved toward the stone beneath the ledger. Last night, Blackridge used this place to judge an Omega because her strength did not resemble what you expected. Today, this stone will witness something different. He turned to Grant. Until the Royal Council reviews your governance, Blackridge will remain under crown oversight. No Omega under your authority will be banished, concealed, traded, or stripped of standing because a wolf manifests differently. I will place the same protection before every territorial alpha. Grant's face hardened. You would change our laws because of one woman? Alara answered before Ronan could. No. The laws need changing because of everyone who never had a king standing here when it happened to them. Silence followed. Ronan looked at her, and something warm passed through his expression. Exactly. Madeline stepped away from her father. Her sapphire dress, so carefully chosen for the royal reception, now looked strangely out of place in the gray morning. She approached Alara without the confidence she had carried the night before. I thought being chosen meant someone was worthy, she said, and being rejected meant they weren't. Alara held her gaze. So did I? For a long time. Madeline looked toward Miriam. Could I help with the injured keeper? Miriam considered her, then handed her a folded blanket. Start there. It was not absolution. It was a beginning. Ethan waited until the crowd began dispersing before approaching. Alara. She turned. I was afraid of losing command, he said. So I chose the future I wanted over the person I promised I wouldn't abandon. He swallowed. I'm sorry. Alara searched for the old ache and found only tenderness for the woman she had been. I forgive you, Ethan. Hope entered his eyes. But I won't come back. The hope disappeared, yet this time he did not argue. He nodded and stepped aside, allowing her to walk past him. Ronan waited beneath an old maple at the edge of the clearing. You didn't need me to speak for you, he said. I never did. Alara glanced toward the ledger. I needed someone with power to stop demanding my silence. Then keep reminding me if I ever forget. She almost smiled. Careful. I might. I'm counting on it. A cane tapped against the path behind them. Silas approached holding the moonstone key, which Alara had removed while Miriam examined its faded silver setting. Along its edge, newly cleaned letters had appeared. Silas returned it to her palm. Your mother left one final inscription. Alara traced the tiny words. What does it say? A witness carries truth forward. Alara closed her fingers around Rebecca's pendant. Silas looked toward Ronan. There is one chamber the temple has not opened yet. Ronan's expression sharpened. Another testimony? No, for the first time. Silas smiled without sadness. The oldest covenant. His gaze shifted between them. It may explain why the temple accepted a witness, refused a king, and then opened when the two of you crossed its threshold together. Ronan offered Alara his hand. No ancient door required it now. Alara looked at his palm, then placed hers in it because she wanted to. Together, they turned toward the forest. Behind them, Silas followed at a slower pace, his cane tapping softly against the path. By the time Alara and Ronan reached the forgotten temple, morning had turned the mist between the trees silver. Ronan stopped before the entrance rather than approaching it. Your door, he said. Alara glanced at him. You're learning. Slowly, she placed her palm against the stone. The doors opened, but Ronan made no move until Alara crossed first. Inside, Silas led them beyond the restored records to a circular chamber untouched by Alden's destruction. No royal crest marked its walls. No throne stood at its center. There were only two figures carved into the floor, a crown and an open eye, separated by several feet of bare stone. The first covenant, Silas said. Before kings decided, witnesses served them. Alara studied the distance between the symbols. Why are they apart? Because neither was created to complete the other. Ronan looked at Silas. Then why did the temple require us both? It didn't. The answer surprised them. Silas rested both hands on his cane. The temple required a witness to awaken. That was Alara. It refused you because the crown had broken its covenant here. Alara remembered the doors slamming before Ronan. Then why did it let him enter when I took his hand? Because a witness has one authority no king can command. Silas looked directly at her. The right to decide whether the crown is worthy of standing beside her. Ronan became very still. Alara understood the entire journey differently. The temple had never chosen Ronan for her. It had waited for her choice. And if I hadn't offered my hand, she asked, he would have remained outside. Ronan released a quiet breath. As he should have. Silas nodded toward the floor. The old covenant can be restored today, but not because you share rank or destiny. The crown must accept judgment from the witness without demanding loyalty in return. Ronan stepped onto the crown. Nothing happened. Alara moved onto the open eye. Still nothing. Ronan frowned. What are we waiting for? Nothing, Silas said softly. The covenant has already seen what it needed to see. Ronan understood first. He stepped away from the crown. Then whatever comes next cannot belong to the temple. Or the crown, Alara said. He approached her, but left enough distance for refusal. Especially not the crown. Something warm stirred beneath Alara's ribs. Her quiet wolf lifted its head, clearer than ever before. At the same instant, Ronan's steel-blue eyes changed. His wolf had sensed hers. A silver line appeared across the floor, not between the ancient symbols, but beneath Alara and Ronan themselves. Her breath caught. Another bond? Silas watched the light without surprise. A second recognition, not a replacement. Alara looked at him. Ethan, what existed between you and Ethan was real. His rejection severed it. Fate may place another possibility before a wolf whose first bond has ended, but it cannot restore what was broken or command what comes afterward. Ronan's gaze remained on Alara. So this doesn't make her mine. No, Silas said. It makes nothing inevitable. Alara felt tears rise. All her life, others had interpreted her silence, her wolf, her worth, even her future. Now destiny itself had arrived without the right to decide for her. Fate can recognize, Silas said. It cannot consent. Ronan extended his hand, but did not close the distance. Then forget the bond. Forget the temple. Forget that I'm king. His voice softened. Alara Whitmore, do you choose me? She remembered Ethan promising to stand beside her until doing so threatened the future he wanted. Then she remembered Ronan carrying his father's ledger into daylight, knowing it could cost him a throne. Alara placed her hand in his. I choose what we build together. The silver line brightened, then settled into a gentle glow. Months later, the 47 names stood restored inside the temple, and the witness order lived again. Silas trained new keepers. Miriam helped protect wolves whose gifts manifested differently, with Madeline working quietly beside her. Ethan earned his command without Alara, while Grant governed Blackridge under royal oversight. Ronan survived the territorial reckoning, not because no alpha challenged him, but because he faced every challenge with Alden's ledger open before them. Alara accepted no decorative title. She became the first restored witness of the new covenant, empowered to question the crown publicly, including the man she loved. One autumn evening, she and Ronan returned alone to the temple. The doors opened before Alara just as they had on the night Blackridge. Cast her aside. Ronan waited outside. Are you coming? She asked. A smile touched his face. If you'll have me. Alara reached back for his hand. Once, she had entered those woods believing rejection had made her less worthy of being chosen. Now she knew better. The temple had not opened because suffering secretly made her special. It opened because the world had mistaken quiet strength for emptiness, and because some truths wait patiently for someone brave enough to carry them forward. Alara crossed the threshold with Ronan beside her, and this time the ancient doors remained open behind them.